Alright. Okay. I don't want anyone. Okay. Okay. That'll work. Okay. Well. Oh. Testing. Testing. I can put it like there. I apologize. Oh, yeah. Alright. Okay. Hope this. I'm testing right now. So. I'm gonna be talking weird. Okay. Alright, that should be good. Hello, welcome everybody to episode 16 of the Laziness podcast. Today's a little bit of a special one. Spooky season is officially upon us. It is October 1st, Saturday, right now. And, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be reading, like, minimum 2 creepypastas for y'all. Um, I don't know if any of you have heard these before. Some of them I've heard of, other ones I have not. So, what I'm gonna be doing is, like, pretty much just have the background noise of this as background noise. You know what I mean? Okay, so let me test something. Hang on. Let me check something. I don't know if you can hear that. Hmm. Okay. It's weird. Okay, so I tested it. Turns out you can't hear what I'm saying. So, or you can't hear what I'm saying. Like, can't hear the audio. So what I was planning on doing is like, when you hover over a game, sometimes you have like noise, like the soundtrack plays. But unfortunately, that doesn't work here. So it's okay. Alright, so basically what I'm going to be doing is just have the game playing. I'm playing Resident Evil 2 right now, for Halloween. But I'm basically just going to have like this as background noise while I read this. And next week I'll probably do something similar. Because this is decent background noise. So, so the first one I'm going to be reading is We Kept Driving. I have never seen this before. I've never read this before. I just looked up random ones and found it. Okay, so. Alright. Let me get a sip of apple juice before I go. There is a video on the internet that goes by the name of, quote, We Kept Driving. This video depicts a man driving down a rainy road at night following a black car into nowhere. However, this video is merely a distraction from the audio. You see, the audio in this video is designed with malicious intent. At first, it might seem like a slightly unsettling two-tone repeating every 10 seconds or so, but this feeling of unsettlement is the feeling that the creator of this video wanted. After a few seconds, a man will start speaking to the viewer in Russian. It is unclear what the man is talking about, but he appears to be quite relaxed about whatever he is talking about. Apparently, upon multiple viewings of the video, strange artifacts will appear in the video, such as the video changing size, the picture blurring, the speech of the Russian man changing, and weird distorted noises playing over the top of the two-tone. There have also been reports of nosebleeds, headaches, depression, and paranoia whilst watching the video. The final effect of the video is one that doesn't seem to be caused by any other horror-based videos. Pain in the wrists and ankles, as well as the inability for the video to fade out. The video will keep playing at a constant volume, even if you turn your speakers down. off entirely, or walk away from the video, almost as if the video has buried itself deep into your subconscious. However, if you start off with the video on mute, the video will stay on mute. It only seems to keep playing at the highest volume you have set it to. Apparently, playing the video at a high volume results in more damaging side effects such as seizures, migraines, loss of sight for the duration of the video, out-of-body experiences, and hallucinations of a white man standing to the right of the viewer about 3 feet away. Keep looking left. During this time, it's worth noting that the video can only be seen 360p, and that the video also has the ability to change to lag and or crash your computer. Viewer discretion is advised. The final side effect of this video is extreme paranoia around windows. If you look into or around a window during the time the video is playing, you may see people standing outside, looking at you directly. All the people who watch the video claim to have had dreams after watching it. The majority of the dreams are loosely connected, however, there are a few connecting themes. 2 teenage boys being chased by some unescapable entity, security cameras, illogical amounts of blood, traumatic experiences, and strange, undefinable floating objects. Most of these dreams end with the dreamer jumping out of a window or smashing a window. It is unknown whether the video still exists, but if it does, run. The man in the video is not a friend. He used the video as a tracker to find his next victim. I must leave now, as he is after me. I watched it too much. Diary log 11/11/11. Last accessed 12/11/11. Alright. That's actually pretty good. That wasn't bad at all. That was actually really good. I actually really enjoyed that. Alright, so that kind of calls back to like some of those like like The Ring and stuff like that, where it's like a haunted type of video, which that's fine. I mean, it was pretty good, I guess. But hey yo. I'm trying to find another one. I'm trying to find one that's not like insane or anything. Okay. Okay. Let's do this one. This one's a bit of a long one. Let's try this one. This one's called Fog. Alright. Let's begin. If you are reading this, then I am dead, and you are standing aboard a derelict Cyclone-class patrol ship, the USS Mistral, with her engines dead and her electrical systems non-functional. was the XO of this vessel, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Simmons. Please read this carefully. If you are an officer or enlisted man in the United States Navy, this is an order. Scuttle this vessel. Immediately. Do not finish this letter, get off the Mistral at once, and send her down. Consider this a quarantine scenario. All hands are likely dead. God help you if they are not. We are 8 days out of Kirkwall, tracking an intermittent and scrambled distress call from what appeared to be an Icelandic fishing vessel. The Magnus Daughter. Sorry about that. Magnus Daughter. Deep in the no fishing zone of the North Sea. We found the vessel, or rather we found a mile-wide streak of oil and fragments, the largest of them still burning. The night before, the enlisted man on watch had reported seeing a flash of light on the horizon. The Magnus Daughter's crew was nowhere to be found, except for one lone fisherman, unburned and floating at the far end of the debris field. He had been shot in the forehead with a small caliber revolver. When we fished his pale blue corpse from the frigid water, he was still clutching a fishing knife in one clamped hand. What we were able to piece together from the fragmented and confounding evidence was that, for reasons unknown, the crew had been in conflict, resulting in the murder of at least one sailor, and the eventual sabotage and destruction of the ship. Visibility was only a few hundred feet as we spent the next day drifting silently among the debris in hopes of finding the survivor. The crew was already visibly shaken by the discovery. The grim dread of the fog and lone smoldering pieces of the Magnus Daughter that collided with our hull unsettled even the most seasoned of us. We had expected an easy cruise and the simple retrieval of a dozen thankful Icelandic fishermen. What we got, at first, was a silent and oil-slick-coated sea, a single corpse, and more than a few nagging questions. The Mistral had just been serviced, after an extended tour with the Atlantic Fleet in Bahrain before her transfer to the North Sea. She was in good running order, so I can only assume that the initial mechanical failure was an act of sabotage, or of some external force. It happened the first night, when our final sweep had been completed, and we returned at the site of the Magnus daughter's first transmission. There was nothing initially remarkable about the spot, a cold and lonely set of coordinates and little else. I was in my cabin, just settling down, when the call sounded from the captain, offering little information, just a stern order to meet him on the deck. Dressing quickly, I emerged from my cabin into a cloud of palpable unease and fear. The enlisted men and the junior officers were coursing through the ship towards the deck, like panicked rats. No one made eye contact or spoke. There was none of the usual gallows humor or camaraderie that bubbles up in situations of limited information, just a grim inertia that pulled us out into the Arctic night. On deck, the night was unnaturally clear and cold, and the bright of the stars burned into the frosty air. Around us in every direction, just a few hundred yards away, the fog and clouds whirled, as if held at bay by our presence. The captain was at the railing, leaning over along with the men on watch. I approached him, suddenly desperate and panicked to know what was happening. When I saw it, the light flooding up from beneath us. The sea was flat, like the surface of a mirror. The water was black, reflecting the pale pinpricks of the stars. But beneath the surface, something glowed with a cold light. Pulsating shapes of violet, green, and deep cobalt blue shone from beneath. They flowed and merged and shimmered silently, deep below the glassy sea. We stared, 24 men and women, struck dumb and horrified by the sight. There was a sense of scale that emerged from the fluid movement of the lights. They seemed to be many fathoms beneath us, which would make them terribly large and impossibly fast. There were no solid shapes, and no disturbance of the water, just a deep field of liquid flowing light. We watched for what seemed like hours, entranced by the mesmerizing ballet of cold light, a mere reflection of northern lights. When it ended, abruptly, there were three almost simultaneous events. First, the light seemed to contract, each mote freezing in place and collapsing like the iris of an eye in bright sunlight. Secondly, there was a tremor in the air that first raised the hair on the back of my neck. As the ghostly lights winked out of existence, it rose in intensity, until I thought my eyeballs might shake their way out of my head. Through the fog of sudden pain, I heard a noise rising above Arctic wind, a humming vibration from the Mistral herself. That matched the electric shuddering in my skull. It was as if every light bulb aboard the Mistral was suddenly flushed with power, flaring bright and buzzing noisily in their housings. And when the whine had reached a fever pitch, they began to pop and shatter among a shatter of sparks. From start to finish, it lasted less than 2 seconds, and we were left floating silently in the dark waters, beneath the starry sky, on a dead and crippled boat. The damage was invisible, without any obvious cause, and total. Nothing aboard the Mistral worked. Each carefully crafted system of multiple redundancies had crumbled. Every light was shattered, and even the replacement bulbs and the small flashlights we all carried held fused and useless filaments. Satellite phones, shortwave radios, all means of communication were useless bricks of plastic and wire. Every battery was dead. Every stereo system was silent. We were adrift, without sail or engine, isolated from the world by 100 miles of black and silent sea. The crew moved through the ship that first night like moles, fumbling through dark corridors with only a few pale green chemical lights to check each system. They relayed each disheartening message like a fire brigade through the darkness, to where the captain and I stood on deck, trying to make sense of the senselessness. At last, when nothing else could be done, I fumbled my way back to my cabin and tried to sleep, the darkness feeling like an impressive many-fingered hand, slowly gripping my chest. The next morning, I again took stock of our situation, hoping for some fragment of hope we had passed by in the night. The damage was total. We would have to find a way to send a distress call, and hope that we had not drifted too far from our last known coordinates. The men may not have known the full details, but it was clear from their haunted visages that they knew how dire the situation was. The first death was that afternoon. The sounds of screaming brought me above deck and into a thick, heavy fog, high in the gloom. I could see bright, burning specks of light descending slowly. My stomach turned. It was 2 signal flares drifting uselessly through the haze. Some damn fool had fired these signal flares. I burned with an unfamiliar and foreign rage, and rushed through the fog to this foredeck with hatred in my blood and my fists clamped tight. The scene that emerged from the fog broke me from my stupor. The enlisted man, the flare gun still in his hand, lay broken in a pool of blood. The captain stood over him, clutching the railing, driving the heel of his boot repeatedly into the broken mess of the boy's skull. I realized then that the screaming I heard, the high keening wail was coming from the captain, his face in a rictus of animal rage. Around them was a small crowd, standing motionless and silent, watching like sentinels. The captain turned to see me, and dropped into a crouch. His finger wrapping around the flare gun, and he raised it level with my eyes. We stared for a long moment at each other, our eyes locked as he panted heavily, his face lightly spattered with blood. The only sound was the wet gurgling exhale of the enlisted man's death rattle, a bubble of blood forming on his ruined face. I'd served with this man for nearly a decade. This was not the man I knew. This was a hollow simulacrum? Simulacrum? I don't know. I'm stupid. This was a hollow simulacrum, filled with violence and terror. I spoke to him then. In a soothing voice, I asked him to hand me the flare gun. He said nothing at first, and then spoke. His voice, a tiny trembling sound that was swallowed up by the thick fog around us. He's murdered us, Ryan. The fog. The flares will never... He shook his head and clenched his eyes tight, as if he were trying to shake himself from a dream. Then he shuddered once, violently, his back arching like a seizure. This little fuck killed us, he choked out. The flare gun wavered in the air, and I took a step closer, reaching out for him. He opened his eyes, and I froze again as we stared silently at one another. You're going to die here? He giggled quietly. I always wanted to watch you die, you fucking coward. He tilted his head back and laughed, one hyena-like bark to the gray sky, and then put the flare gun in his mouth and fired, the last flare igniting and temporarily bathing his head in a halo of magnesium, orange, and smoke. He tumbled back over the railing. If there was a splash when he hit the water, it was swallowed by the fog. I stood for what seemed like a very long time. It slowly dawned on me that I was alone, the silent audience having melted away below decks, no doubt taking the grim tale with them. I feared for morale, an absurd concern, I realize now, but could not move from the spot, as if sheer force of will would cause the sea to regurgitate this man, my friend. The first gunshot broke me from my reverie. In the emergency lockers, I found that a handful of flare guns remained, and I stuffed one into each pocket and entered the dim passageway to below deck. Over the hollow retort of gunshots, other muffled sounds began to emerge. The choking sobs, the screams of pain and anger, all bring the faint impression of the copper smell of blood. The dark was oppressive and thick as my heart rose in my chest. The pale, fading light of the chemical glow sticks that hung at the regular intervals illuminated the bare corridor, and I moved slowly toward my cabin. It had been sacked, and my service pistol was missing. The next two cabins held the corpses of the junior officers, their broken forms still in their bunks. Skulls opened like blossoming flowers under the point-blank shots. I felt a distinct and irrational desire to run on deck and leap overboard, to swim away from the boat into the unknown sea. I gripped a flare gun and held it out ahead of me, less like a weapon and more like a talisman, and began to pace slowly down the corridor, to the enlisted bunks. The door was wide open, and the smell of blood and fear and shit was nauseating. As my eyes slowly adjusted to the dim, I saw a field of bodies, torn, shredded, and shattered by bullets and makeshift clubs. A few of the men still moved, twitching slightly. I watched in frozen terror as one man, his face a mask of blood and rage, turned up his head to regard me, and with a weak cry of rage, began to drag himself with his arms, trailing a broken and shattered leg towards me. From the shadows, another form pounced on him, a boot digging into the wounded man's back with a wet cracking sound. I recognized the attacker's face in the green chemical dim. A quiet and bookish young man, like the captain. This was not the man I knew. This was a beast that wore his skin. He reached down and grabbed the wounded man's jaw, thumbs slipping into his mouth. The wounded man growled, a feral mindless sound, and tried to bite down, but his attacker gripped tight and pulled. The jaw came off with the sound of tearing tendons and a ululating shriek that vanished into the air. I was no longer breathing, holding silently at the entrance, but the attacker snapped his head up to see me, nostrils flaring. The jawbone hit the floor with a meaty sound, and he lunged towards me with silent animal grace. I fired the flare gun, and it hit him square on the chest. His shirt caught fire, and all air escaped his lungs with a sudden forceful exhale. But impossibly, he continued on towards me. As I passed through the portal and slammed the door, the fire had climbed into his hair, and he was squealing now, his clawed hands still outstretched towards me. I felt him impact against the door, and saw that nightmare visage wreathed in fire through the small porthole, lips already burnt away to reveal 2 rows of perfect teeth. He wailed and began to smash his burning form against the door, once, twice, 3 times, and then silence. I raised my eyes to the porthole, and saw only the faint image of the burning shape as it disappeared into the darkness. All thought, all conscious thought evaporated, and I fled from that charnel house. I have barricaded all entrance to below deck now, and have doomed myself to slow death at the hand of the enveloping cold. I can still hear the living ones down there, screaming and banging on the doors. They are not the men that I knew. I console myself with this thought as I leave them in the dark to starve or murder each other. If you have read this far and have not fled these waters, or God forbid are still aboard the Mistral, then I beg you again, leave now while you can. Do not look below deck. There are none of us left to save, and certainly none worth saving. It's cold now, and the fading day surrendering the wan, gray light to the dark. There are no stars this night, nothing but the heavy blanket of night. If I could get below, I would find some way of destroying the Mistral, like the brave men of the Magnus daughter, but it's too late. The most I can make of my last moments, as all feelings flees my extremities, and writing becomes impossible, is a warning. Please send us into the deep. Tell no one you found us, and never return. There are things and primal desires older than man, and forces beyond the grasp of our simple minds, and they dwell here, beneath the frozen sea. Okay. Damn. That was really freaking good. That was really good. That was really freaking good. Wow. I I like that a lot. Okay. All right. Okay. Hmm. Let me look for one. Trying to find this one. Please tell me it's here. Damn. Not there. Okay. Well. Alright. Here's another one. This one is called The Disney Mirror Ritual. I'm gonna take another sip of apple juice because I'm thirsty. Okay. Have you ever heard of the Disney Mirror Ritual? Don't be fooled by its name, or its location at the, quote, happiest place on Earth. It's a fairly dangerous ritual, with a high chance of getting caught. Granted, the payoff is fairly high. It is not known why or how this ritual came to be at Disney World. It is said that each of the Disney parks has its own unique ritual, with the same consequences for failure, but the one at Disney World seems to have the most information. This is a mirror ritual. Mirror mythology is well invoked in Disney stories. Think Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, 1 Hour in Wonderland, and such. I'm sure you might think such a ritual would take place at the Haunted Mansion or one of the spookier rides, but you'd be wrong. The main part of the ritual takes place at Cinderella's castle, roughly the epicenter of the Magic Kingdom. The night part of the ritual must take place between 2 and 4 a.m. To complete this ritual, you will need 3 items. 1. A piece of chalk. 2. A knife that has had its handle broken off. In other words, simply the blade. The type of knife does not matter, but as you will have to sneak this and pass security, you might want a smaller blade you can conceal in your shoe or other hiding place. 3. A broken shard of mirror, roughly the size of your palm. You might want to find a pre-broken shard if you believe in the superstition of 7 years of bad luck. The ritual begins during the daytime hours of the Magic Kingdom section of Disney World. During the day, you must hide the 3 items in separate areas of the park. The areas to choose from are Main Street USA, Liberty Square, Fantasyland, Adventureland, Frontierland, and Tomorrowland. Study the map of the park and decide what routes would be easiest to travel undetected. Don't pick distances you can't manage. Keep in mind that the area around Cinderella's castle will be the most heavily patrolled by security. While there are security cameras in the park, don't worry about them. Something about the ritual makes them seem to malfunction. Before hiding the items, head to the tunnel going through Cinderella's castle. Be careful here. There are some Disney staff that are aware of the ritual and know to keep an eye out for those attempting it. Hide the chalk in your hand, pick out a brick you are able to reach at face level, and when you're absolutely sure no one is watching you. Critical tip. You might want a friend to make a distraction, so ask any immediate staff questions to get their attention. Mark the corner of the brick with the chalk. Say the words, "Mirror, mirror," then leave. This will tell the park you intend to play. You will use this brick during the ritual. Then find hiding places for the items. At this point, you have completed the daytime part of the ritual. Use the remainder of time as you will until the park closes, but make sure you find a place you can remain hidden once the park closes for the night. It's not easy, but it has been done. If you decide not to go through the ritual, retrieve the items, erase the chalk mark, and leave the park. You can only cancel the ritual during the daytime hours. Do not attempt the ritual again. Ever. Do not emerge from your hiding place right after the park closes. It will be full of maintenance workers and patrolling security. Wait until at least an hour after the park closes. But remember, you need to be done before 4 a.m. The security presence will be smaller at that hour, but by no means gone. Watch for the roving security guards as you make your way to your items. Retrieve the mirror shard last, or you will trigger the more dangerous part of the ritual early. If you reach any of your hiding places and the item is gone, run! The park doesn't accept your challenge. You need to reach the entrance and get out, or even get yourself busted by security, which will be a much preferable fate. Once you retrieve the mirror shard, you will begin the second, more dangerous phase of the ritual. Security patrols are no longer your concern. They will have mysteriously vanished from the park. You may see a flashlight beam way off in the distance, but they will not come close to you. Some chalk this up to magic. Others theorize that completing the steps until this point triggers a parallel dimension of sorts within the park. Regardless of the cause, you have a new concern. Make haste and head towards Cinderella's castle, but once again, try to stay out of the light. Or try to stay out of sight. Use the mirror shard to look around corners and behind you and keep the broken blade in your dominant hand. You are on the lookout for figures that have been dubbed, quote, the false. The false take the form of Disney mascots you might see during the daytime. Don't be fooled though, the paid Disney mascots went home hours ago. It's not exactly hard to tell the difference. Soon worn by these figures will appear filthy, matted, and generally tattered. You would most likely find them lurking around corners, which is why you want to use the mirror first. If you see one of the false in your mirror, take your blade lightly between your fingers and drag it across the reflection on the mirror with the point. This will prompt the figure to move away. However, odds are you will have at least one encounter with a false face to face. They are capable of appearing at will if you are on a straight street or a bridge with no turns. Should you see a false at any point not as a mirror reflection, shut your eyes immediately and gently place the mirror shard at your feet, but keep hold of the blade. Remain still with your eyes shut and listen for the footsteps and rattling breath. The false will be moving slowly towards you. It will stop at arm's length in front of you and reach. Your only chance for escape is to estimate when it is reaching for you. Then reach out and jab the figure itself with your blade. Do not miss. You won't get a second chance. Miss and you fail the ritual. Consequences of failure are discussed later. If your aim is true, the false will hiss in pain and begin moving away. When the footsteps are no longer audible, you can open your eyes, retrieve your mirror, and continue on your path. Critical tip. Your blade will become weaker each time a face-to-face encounter occurs. If your blade breaks, you will be defenseless. The false will know. Keep face-to-face encounters to a minimum. Should you successfully arrive at Cinderella's castle, you will be safe. Find the brick you marked. Take your mirror and hold it to the brick. Trace a chalk outline around the shard. When you pull your hand away, the shard will remain on the surface. Step back and turn around 3 times clockwise. With each turn, say the words, "Mirror, mirror," for a total of 3 times. Upon completing the 3rd turn, you will face the wall only to see that the surface area of the brick has become that of a mirror. Look into the mirror and you will see the faint outline of a clouded face. Here's where the goal of the ritual comes into play. Make sure you choose the question beforehand. The face will slowly say, past, present, future. To choose, nod your head after the mirror says the one you want. If you nod for past, the mirror will show you the answer to a question regarding the past. It can range from a personal mystery from your own past to a historical mystery, such as who killed JFK. For present, you can ask to be shown a solution to a problem currently plaguing you, or an issue the world currently faces. Future, needless to say, will show you a future outcome yet to pass. Ask the mirror your question and watch your long-awaited answer. Once you have your answer, step away from the mirror again. Turn around 3 times, now in a counterclockwise direction. Again, with each turn, say the words, "Mirror, mirror," for a total of 3 times. Upon completing the 3rd turn, the mirror will be gone and so will the shard. The castle has taken it as tribute. Leave the castle and head back to your hiding place. On your way, drop the blade into the moat surrounding the castle. Keep hold of the chalk. You need not worry about being caught by security or any faults at this point. The park respects your accomplishment and will allow you temporarily safe passage safely. However, do not take this gesture as excuse to linger or explore. This will be taken as arrogance or an insult and your protection will be revoked. Simply head back to your initial hiding spot as quickly as you can. When you return to your hiding place, draw a circle of chalk around you. If in a location with a door, draw a half circle around the door on the floor. Remain hidden until morning when the park opens and visitors have been let back in. Critical tip: do not fall asleep. Do not respond to any voices or footsteps you may hear, no matter how close the sound gets to you. If you're hiding in place with a door, do not react to knocks, no matter how frantic they become. You will remain safe if you stay awake and quiet. Most of all, do not follow along if you hear a Disney song being played. This includes singing, humming, or even following the song in your mind. Cover your ears with your hands and don't let the song get stuck in your head. The following day, once you know visitors have begun entering the park, leave your hiding spot and immediately head for the exit of the park. Do not stop to do anything, just leave. Drop the chalk at the entrance, and once you have left, never return to Disney World. Ever. The park knows you and your welcome is worn out. Now, the part that has yet to be discussed is what happens if you fail the ritual. Should you be caught by the false during the item retrieval, linger too long outside your hiding place after completing the night ritual, or answer to voices such knocks before morning. Should one of the false place their hand on you, you will lose the ability to move freely. If you return to the park after successfully completing the ritual, you will encounter a false that no one else will appear to see. In any case, they will slowly lead you to the entrance of the park. You can walk away then, but no matter where you go or what you do during the night, the next day you will find yourself at the entrance of the park once again. Only you will once again have no control of your actions. As if in a hypnotic trance, you will move towards your fate. Perhaps you will find yourself on a ride with non-functioning seat restraints, only to be thrown out onto the tracks, walking on the above-ground monorail tracks with an incoming train behind you, on a riverboat that flips into waters not made for swimming, in the path of an oncoming parade float. Whatever fate the, quote, happiest place on earth has for you, rest assured it won't involve a happily ever after. That was pretty good. I always liked ones like that because, like, it's something that is like a classic campfire story. Well, I'm trying to find another one. Let's try another one. Trying to find another one. This one might get me banned. I'm not gonna read that one. That one might get me banned. Okay, let's try this one. This one's called The Strangers. Let's try this. My name is Andrew Eriks. I lived, once, in a city called New York. My mother is Terry Eriks. She's in the phone book. If you know the city and you read this, find her. Don't show her this, but tell her I love her. And that I'm trying to come home. Please. It all started when I decided, around the time that I turned 25, that it was time for me to give up taking my backpack into work. It would make me look more mature, I thought, if I weren't lugging around a book bag everywhere like a high school student. Of course, this meant that I had to give up reading in the subway in the mornings and afternoons, since I couldn't quite fit my paperbacks into a pocket. A briefcase would have been out of line, since I was working in a factory, and messenger bags always seemed a little, I don't know, fruity to me. Too purse-like for my liking. I had an MP3 player, which helped pass the time for a while, but when it broke, it would shut down at the end of every song if I didn't skip to the next track manually. I gave that up too. So every morning I'd sit in the metro for a half hour that dragged on endlessly, with nothing at all to do but watch my fellow passengers. I was slightly shy, so I didn't like to be caught at it. So I'd surreptitiously watch people. I think that's how you say that. I think that's how you said it. Interestingly enough, quickly discovered that I wasn't the only one in the. I quickly discovered that I wasn't the only person in the world who was uncomfortable in public. People covered it up in various ways, but I learned to see through them. I divided them up into categories in my head. There were the fidgeters, who couldn't get comfortable, constantly moving their hands, shifting their weight, moving their legs closer to the bench, then farther. There were the most noticeably nervous types. After them were the fake sleepers, who take their seat and practically close their eyes in the same second. Most of them weren't really sleeping. The real sleepers shifted more. Came awake suddenly at stops or after loud noises. The fakes just zoned from the second they sat until the moment of the train pop pulled into their stop. Then there were the MP3 player addicts, the occasional laptop people, the people who traveled in groups and talked too loudly, the cell phone junkies who were either very popular or just completely unable to shut up for more than 2 minutes at a time. Just as people watching was threatening to get unbearably boring, I found my first incongruity. A middle-aged looking man, brown-haired, average size and weight, and dressed casually. Oddly enough, he seemed almost too normal. He had no remarkable features, no mannerisms, as if he were designed to fade into a crowd. It was that which led me to notice him. I was intentionally trying to see how people acted on the subway, and he didn't act at all. Didn't even react, either. It was like seeing someone sitting in front of the television, watching a documentary about fish. They aren't excited, aren't engaged, but they aren't looking away either. Present, but not accounted for. He was on the subway in the afternoons. It was more than a month into the He was on the subway in the afternoons. It was more than a month into the people watching experiment before he caught my eye. Because I didn't catch the same subway every day and didn't consciously sit in the same car when I did, I saw him for the first time on a Monday, I believe, and for the second time on the Thursday of the same week. He obviously did catch the same train and sat in the same car in the same seat. OCD much? I thought at the time. Since he'd caught my attention so much the first time, I watched him more avidly the next. He was, frankly, downright unsettling. He didn't do anything at all. He sat there, expressionless, head straight, no matter what happened. A woman with a wailing child entered the car and sat right behind him, and still nothing. He didn't so much as turn his head around or frown in annoyance. And that kid was fucking loud, too. By the time the subway reached my stop, I found myself queasy, and when I exited the car, my hands were shaking like I was having a nicotine fit. Something about that man was wrong. He was, I thought, some kind of freak. A sociopath, maybe. One of those quiet guys who, it turns out, has a dozen women's heads in the freezer. The first victim, his mother. I found myself intentionally dawdling after work in the afternoons, stopping to browse in kiosks in the mall near the subway even when I didn't intend on buying anything. For a couple weeks, I avoided catching that subway, and when I found myself at the stop when it was pulling in, I made sure to choose a train car as far from the one I'd see him in as possible. Then, one morning, I saw another person who set off the same warning bells in my head. A woman, just as plain-looking, just as out of place in hustle and commotion around her. The moment I recognized her, I realized later, was when my obsession began. My people watching, which had began as a bit of a hobby to stay above boredom, became something of a religion to me. I couldn't enter a subway or ride a bus without finding myself examining everyone, filling out a mental checklist in my head. Plain clothes of solid colors? No brands? Check. No expressions? No casual glances out the windows or towards other passengers? Check. No bags, purses, or accessories? Check. 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 Accessories. No bags, purses, or accessories? Check, check, check. We've got another. I started calling them the strangers. I didn't see them every day, even after I started taking the metro more than I needed to, even when I found myself riding buses out of my way in the evenings. But they were there, often enough. Seeing one would set my teeth on edge, making my palms sweaty and my throat feel dry. If you've ever given a speech, you might recognize the feeling. Even though they didn't pay me the slightest bit of attention, I felt like I was on a display for them. I could see them, plain as day. How could they miss me? They didn't, though. Not in the way that I could tell. And when, eventually, my curiosity overpowered my fear, I decided to follow one. I chose the one that I'd found first, the man in the afternoon subway who always kept the same seat. I got on and took a seat behind him. We rode to the end of the line, and he rose and walked up before I did. Keeping distance between us, I tailed him, but he didn't go far. He took a seat on the nearby bench, as expressionless as always, and I turned a corner and waited, trying to look nonchalant. After a few minutes, the next metro arrived and I watched him enter it, and saw him take the same seat. I couldn't find the nerve to follow him again. He hadn't gone anywhere. He just rode the metro to the end of the line, and then what? Rode it back? What possible reason would anyone have for that? It nagged at me. Long after I rode a later train back home and tried to get some rest, I couldn't leave it alone. Not until I could make some sense of it. I found myself more than confused. I was downright angry now. Why was this uncanny bastard, this almost inhuman person, riding subway trains back and forth going nowhere? The mind, I once read, recoils from certain things, because the very sight of them is an affront. Spiders set it off in a lot of people, particularly great big ones. They just looked wrong to us, alien. That was the effect the strangers were beginning to have on me. They offended my senses. I followed him again the next day, and again the day after that. Every day, for at least a week, the two of us made our silent trips together, though only I knew it. By the end of the week, I was following him for hours, until the last train that stopped at near my apartment blocked that night. We rode from one end of the city to the other, and then back again. I wasn't people watching any longer. I was person watching. Stranger watching. I didn't have eyes for anyone else. Though, peripherally, I noticed more than a few confused glances sent my way. Other than that, we two might have been the only two people on the planet for all I cared. I lost my job the next week. My manager was kind and timid, but firm. I wasn't concentrating. I had no focus. I wasn't being anywhere near productive. It was actually quite a speech, I think. But I could barely hear it all. All I could think about was my new work, my vigil. What would that man, no, that thing on the subway get up to when I was there to keep an eye on him? I left work for the last time at noon that day. Normally I'd have started tailing my subject at 5:30, but I was sure that he'd be waiting for me. I wish, now, that I paid more attention to that day. Was it sunny? It was summer, after all. I could have walked around downtown, maybe checked out a few pretty girls. Could have had an iced cappuccino and a smoke at an outdoor cafe and then gone home, putting my growing obsession out of my head, found a new job and taken to reading on trains and buses again. Instead, I waited. More than one train goes up and down the lines, so I sat in the station for at least an hour until I saw him through the window. I walked into the subway car and noticed that for the first time my skin wasn't clammy, my hands weren't shaking, my heart wasn't pounding so hard. I sat, for the first time, right across from him, directly in his line of sight. Watched for a change in his face. Would he recognize me? If he did, I saw no sign of it, and I was looking hard. We must have made quite a pair, sitting across from one another that afternoon, staring at and into one another. It was hard not to let the building rage in me contort my face, but with effort I was able to keep as still and as expressionless as him. Inside, I practically screamed at him. "React to me, you fucking asshole! See me, damn it! I know you for what you are!" I didn't, though, and my silent demands weren't answered. Not the first trip around, or the second, or the third, or the 10th. We rode far into the night together, and at each terminus we got out together and waited. I sat right beside him on the bench, watching him from the corner of my eye, and still got nothing from him. But two could play that game as well as one. Finally, we made our last trip together. I had him and knew it. Last trip of the night before the train stopped running. I'd always let him get away from me at that point, because at the end of the line is a long way from home, and the buses stopped running at the same time as the subways. But this time, I'd follow him. Finally see what he was when the train stopped running. I'd get some answers. Maybe. The subway rolled on, and the anticipation grew in me. The car emptied out around us slowly, until it was just we two silent watchers below the city. I fought to keep a magic grin at bay, and the subway slowed to a crawl, then stopped. The end of the line. The stranger didn't move, still didn't react at all. The car stood still, doors open. I could dimly hear the last few stragglers making their way out of the station somewhere behind us, footsteps echoing in the silence. Nothing. The speaker system dinged to let anyone half asleep know that we'd reached the terminus. Still nothing. And finally, I could hear footsteps again. A conductor or something, popping his head into each car to make sure it was empty before taking the train wherever the hell it goes for the night. I didn't take my eyes from my silent quarry. I managed to see the conductor from the corner of my eye when he finally reached our car. He looked in, his eyes roamed over us, and a puzzled look came over his face. He blinked a few times, and paused. I waited for him to speak, and the moment stretched out, but then, with a slight shake of his head, he left us. There was a car ahead of ours, and I heard him stop to check that too. And a few minutes later, the train started up again. We rode for a time, and then looped around and the subway was parked. I could see into the windows of more trains on either side of us, and through their opposing windows into even more. And then he smiled at me. It was just a small curl of the lip that would have gone unnoticed if I hadn't spent the last several hours studying his face. "So," he said in a rough baritone, "here we are." I tried to respond but couldn't right away. My throat had clamped shut. Terror filled me. It felt like the whole underground cavern we were in had just collapsed onto me. I coughed and stammered and finally managed with a raspy voice to ask the question that had kept me up all night, drove me halfway to madness, and led me to this place and this moment. "What are you?" He ignored me. He stood, and the train doors opened. Then, shockingly, he turned to face me. "Coming." He didn't wait for an answer, but walked out onto the platform. I scrambled to follow. "Come on, damn it!" I shouted. "Talk to me! Who are you? Why do you ride the metro all fucking day?" He didn't look back, or slow his step. I couldn't see his face, but it's safe to guess that he didn't react at all. No more than he had to anything else. I stalked after him, still shouting for a time, but eventually he gave up. 5 words was all I was going to get out of him, I guessed. We walked along the platform until we came to a junction, then turned. Now, we were perpendicular to the trains around us. The path ahead was lit from above, but I couldn't see where it ended. The trains on either side of us went on forever, as far as I could tell. Far too many trains to service in one city, I realized. It wouldn't have mattered by then, I figure, but I probably should have paid more attention to that at the time. I'm not sure how long we walked. I had a watch once, but it broke. I took out my cell phone at one point, but got no reception down there, and all it would show to me was no signal. The stranger would stop every now and then and look at the subway car for a minute or two, but then pass on. It took me a while to figure out why, but eventually I saw that they weren't all the same. Long lines of them would be similar, and then we'd come to a different model. It'd be a little larger or smaller, or have a slightly different shape. The cockpits, or whatever you call the front part of where the conductor sits, were superficially different as well. I didn't, and I don't know what exactly he was looking for, but eventually he must have found it, because we turned again, and the subway doors opened when my impromptu guide stopped in front of them. We entered and took our seats. "Are you willing to speak now?" I asked him. No answer. I sighed with frustration and seriously weighed the pros and cons of punching him right in the face for a time, when suddenly the lights in the car came on and I heard the engine starting up. "What the fuck?" He gave me a look that was almost sad. "You're not going to be able to go back." "What are you talking about? Go back where?" Nothing again. The stone-walling asshole. The train lurched into motion, pushing off in the opposite direction than the one we came from. I think. The endless parade of them had thrown off my sense of direction. It rolled for a few minutes, and then began to slow as we approached the stop. His vacant gaze grew sharper, and for the first time I got the sense that he was actually staring at me, rather than just looking in the direction I happened to be in. "Be still. Be silent. Don't catch their attention." The train stopped, the doors opened, and they began to flood in. I don't know what I noticed first. The weird clothes, the 2 long arms with hands that almost brushed the floor, the jet-black eyes and angular faces, or the blue-gray hue of their skin. My eyes took in all of those stimuli, but for a long second my brain refused to process it. And when it finally did, I was barely able to bite down on the shriek that tried to tear its way from my throat. I thought my heart was going to explode. Hell, I thought it was going to explode. I was like a strummed guitar string. Everything in me lurched and throbbed. My sight grew dizzy, which I was thankful for, and I vomited. My mouth was clenched shut, and I forced myself to swallow it, barely managing it. My instincts were screaming his words at me. Be still. Be silent. Don't catch their attention. That day was a blur. We rode the subway car up and down the line, still and expressionless, for hours. For days, perhaps. It seemed much longer than the line I knew, the line I'd followed the stranger along. The hideous things around us seemed to pay us no undue attention, though we must have stood out fiercely. I was so petrified with fear that when we finally returned to the endless cavern of trains, alone, I burst into tears. I collapsed to the floor and just sobbed for a long time, the stranger watching impassively. When I gained control of myself, I looked at him imploringly. "Take me home, please," I croaked out. "I can't," he told me. "Don't know which one of these would lead you back, if any of them do." He stood and walked out onto the platform, and I rose warily and followed him. He spun around sharply. "I think you followed me enough." The rage I'd felt for him before, that the panic had temporarily buried, rose up in me. "What?" I screamed. Rushing forward, I grabbed him by the shoulders, and with a burst of insane strength I didn't even know was in me, slammed him up against the side of a metro car. "You fucking son of a bitch! What the fuck did you do to me?" I slammed him again and again. "Take me back!" He bore it all passively, and soon the flare of anger in me gutted out, leaving me hollow. "Please," I beg. "Please take me home." "That's not how it works," he said. "If we stay together, it's more likely that we'll be noticed. Go your own way. Be still and be subtle, and they'll think that you're one of theirs." "How could you do this to me? Why?" He gave me another look, almost sad look. I had to. "You will too. You get stuck sometimes." He brushed my hands off his shoulders and turned to walk away. I fell to my knees, suddenly out of strength, and watched him leave. And at the junction, he turned back to face me. "I'm sorry." And then he was gone. I stared there on the cold tiles for a very long time. I curled up into a ball and wept for a while. After there weren't any tears left in me, I even managed to get some sleep. And when I woke, the subway train I'd come in was gone, off carrying more blue-gray abominations to wherever blue-gray abominations go. I couldn't handle going back there, anyways. I tried to find my way back to where I'd started, to find a subway that I recognized, but I wasn't even sure which direction I should have been going in anymore. Finally, I found one that might have looked familiar, or I was desperate enough to imagine that it did. When I stepped up to the door, it opened for me, and I took a seat. It started up, and in spite of being a lifelong agnostic, I prayed my heart out. The train slowed to a stop, the doors opened, and for a second I thought I was saved. People! Human beings! I'd be the most devout man in the world. Then I noticed the eyes. Specifically, the third large eye in the center of their foreheads. Well, fuck you then, God, I thought. They were easier to take than the last bunch, though, and I was thankful for that. The third eye blinked independently of the other two, though, and that was nauseating. And when one of them smiled or laughed or spoke with another, I couldn't help but notice that their teeth were sharp and misshapen, and yellow-green with filth. But if I was careful and selectively blind, I could pretend for a stretch that I was home. Until one of them entered with a sandwich in hand, and I realized with a start that I was starving and hadn't eaten or drank in what must have been days. The next terminus I came to, I decided to try and find something to eat or drink. I don't know why I waited, but it seemed important, to ride to the end of the line. I got there, and could barely bring myself to leave. I'd never seen a stranger leave the underground. I'd never seen him eat or drink either. My stomach would not take no for an answer, though. I steeled myself, and tried to keep my face carefully neutral, and made my way out into the station proper, and then I got confused. Oh, excuse me. I was looking for escalators, or stairs, or something like that, but all I saw was holes in the ground. The walls and the ceiling. Gaping, irregularly sized holes. Like I was in the middle of a beehive. What was I supposed to do, leap into one? It didn't make any sense to me, not until someone came through one. He floated up through the floor, and then floated by me. He frowned for a second, or at least I think it was probably a frown. But apparently whatever kept him from recognizing me as alien in the subway extended at least this far. It did not, unfortunately, allow me to levitate, which seemed to be the only way out of the subway station beehive thing. Swearing, I made my way back down to the tunnel. I was angry, lost, starving, and I'd been abandoned to a fate that, if it wasn't worse than hell, was at least twice as stupid and 3 times as nonsensical. I was not in the best frame of mind, which I feel excuses the mistake. Normally, I take corners with a wide berth, because everyone knows that if you just dart around a corner sharply in a public place, chances are decent that you're going to walk right into someone. As I did. I slammed into someone, a woman, and fell to the ground. Without thinking, I reacted like any New Yorker would, badly. "Jesus fuck, you stupid bitch, watch where you're going!" I realized my mistake even before she did. Her eyes grew quizzical and confused, and when she really noticed me, they bulged with horror. She floated quickly back from me and let out something scream-like, a little more yowly than I was used to, but I got the point. Further down the tunnel, I saw alien, 3-eyed heads turning towards us. I thought, suddenly, about all those sharp, filthy teeth, and just like that, I was running. The subway train wasn't there, but there was a walkway along the tunnel, for the repairman, I assume. That's who use it where I'm from anyways. I took it at full speed and just kept running until each breath felt like getting stabbed. I stopped, panting, and looked back. The tunnel had curved, so I couldn't see the light any longer, but nobody appeared to be following me. Going back, though, was not an option. I continued forward in the dark for a long time. Eventually I came to a small opening in the wall, and stopped there for a rest. Hunger, despair, and a full speed run, a terrified run, had all left me absolutely drained. I probably would have wept again, which seemed to be all I was capable of lately, but it just seemed like too much work. I sat against the wall, legs splayed out, and imagined I was beating that bastard stranger to death with a hammer. It was a relieving image. A rat was shuffling around nearby in the dark. Every so often, I would kick out a foot to scare it away, but after a time I didn't even bother with that. Rabies or any other diseases it might be carrying would be a blessing compared to endless traveling through the subways of strange worlds, lost, destitute, and alone. When it crept near again, I didn't shoo it off. Even when it reached and pressed against my leg, I couldn't bring myself to care. Not until a train passed by, and the lights of its cars lit up to the culvert I was in, and the thing that I had thought was a rat. It was rat-like, yes, but not as much as it was spider-like. If someone had bred the two of them together, the resulting abomination might have been almost as horrible as the thing nuzzling my leg. I shrieked, flung myself up from the floor, and booted it with like a soccer player would, right into the opposite wall. Its back made a sickening crunch, and I watched it twitch out its last before the final car passed and darkness returned. And in the darkness, a terrible thought came to me. I wondered if it was edible. I didn't want to, and I gagged just imagining it, but I was hungry. And there was no guarantee that I'd be able to find food in this place or ever again. A rat spider was my only option. I held off as long as I could, but in the end, survival trumped squeamishness. I held my lighter, but nothing to light on fire. I picked meat off its carcass and cooked it a little by holding over the flame, but it didn't help much. Nothing could have. Its meat was foul. More foul than anything you can imagine. I've been that desperate for food since, and eaten many other questionable things, but nothing has ever been as bad as that rat spider. In retrospect, that is when I became a stranger. Before, I'd struggled to reach that expressionless state the other had maintained. What I'd taken for calm was numbness. A sharp rock thrown in a river will, over time, have its edges rounded off by the water beating over it. And what I'd gone through had done the same. Tearing up and eating a monster in the dark below an alien world, the last of my edges smoothed. By the time I left the darkness and came back into the tunnel, I was as expressionless and empty as the one who had led me here had ever been. That was not the worst of it, though. The worst came later, the first time I got stuck. The stranger had mentioned it, but in the state I had been in, I had hardly noticed. One night, at the end of the line, I was asked to leave the train. The road was one of the closer to normal ones. The people were almost human, as I recognized it. They were orange, sure, and hunchbacked, but other than that, they were practically normal. After the last world, where the people had been hideously overweight, six-breasted hermaphrodites with no noses, the orange guys were pretty much beautiful to me. I thought, at first, that the conductor was talking to someone else, but I was the only one in the car, and moreover, I'd understood him. The oranges certainly hadn't been speaking English all day, but nonetheless, I could understand what he was saying. When I stood, I began to realize why. I couldn't stand up straight. I was hunchbacked, and as I saw in my reflection against the window as I exited, orange. I pieced together the rest from there. Stuck meant that I was trapped in this world for some reason, and stuck looking like them as well, which would be handy if I wanted to take the opportunity to leave the subway station, which is possible most times, but requires a lot of care and is quite overwhelming. Alien worlds are a little revolting, I've found. You try to compare them to your own, but the differences are so vast that it just makes you sick. I left that subway anyways, because it was clear I wasn't returning to the Separator hub, what I'd taken to calling the infinite line of subway trains that night, or any other night. I soon found out whatever had let me go unnoticed wasn't working any longer. I considered, briefly, staying, but this place wasn't home, and could never be. Even if they looked like me, their culture was bound to be different. That was a lesson I'd learned before. Even worlds where the people are absolutely indistinguishable from me are fraught with danger. I was once on a world where the people looked just like me. Well, actually they looked Brazilian, but that was more than close enough, and learned the hard way that the gesture that to me means hello meant something gravely insulting. Insulting enough that I'd been beaten half to death while a crowd looked on with approval. Besides, even if that place had a culture I could fake, I didn't want to stay. I wanted one of two things. To find my way home, or to find the stranger who set me on this path and beat the shit out of him. Nothing else would do. So I wanted to move on. I wasn't sure though if I could do to some I wasn't sure though if I could do to some poor sucker what had been done to me. Could I really force someone else to wander the eternal underground like this? It turned out I didn't have to. After a few months, one of them did notice me. Yes, and began to follow me for weeks. I very carefully made it seem like I hadn't seen him, just like the stranger had. But I was torn between the desire to warn him away and desire to bring him to the end of the line so I could leave this dismal world already. The last night, he followed me to the end of the line, just as I had once done. He managed to work up the nerve to sit right across from me. And as soon as the train stopped at the terminus, he rushed off. I waited, hoping the conductor wouldn't see me and I could continue on, but to no avail. I left the car and the metro rushed off without me, and I cursed inside. As I walked around the corner towards the ticket booths, the young man who'd been following me attacked. He had a wicked curved knife and should have caught me by surprise, but I'd been traveling through hostile alien worlds for several years. My reflexes were sharp. We struggled viciously before I managed to wrestle the knife from him. I don't know how it got in his neck. I don't think I wanted to kill him. I hadn't even been that angry. Remember my own building rage from so long before. Afterwards, as he lay there, bled out, I got pissed. I kicked him repeatedly, shouting, "You dick! You were supposed—" Kick, kick. "To follow me!" Kick. I fled the scene of the crime, but not for long. I was there bright and early the next day to catch the first subway of the morning, and that night, when I rode to the end of the line, I was invisible to the conductor again. I guess you can either kill them or bring them with you if you want to return to the central hub. I was invisible again, but I was also orange and hunchbacked still. I stayed that way until the next time I became stuck. The next time I killed. That one went much faster. I didn't wait for her to follow me. Once I was recognized as a stranger, I recognized her as the next one, and I made my choice. I won't bring anyone else into this. It makes me wonder, though, about the stranger who inducted me. I wonder what he originally looked like, and whether he knew he could have killed me. I wonder, too, about the others I saw back home, and there were a few I came across since I left. Do they kill them or take them? And whichever one they choose, do they consider it a mercy? I can't bring myself to talk to them, to ask. We're damned either way, and the damned should suffer in solitude. I've killed 15 of them now, and I've gotten very good at it, but I've made a decision. I'm done killing. Innocents, at least. Before I returned to the central hub, I filled a backpack with as much paper as I could cram into it, and I wrote this story. Over and over again, to be left in as many subway trains as I can. A couple thousand messages and bottles cast into a sea of steel rails. This is a request and a warning. My request, above, was that you find my mother and tell her a lie. It's a white lie, don't worry. Tell my mother that I love her, and that I am trying to come home. It may give her some hope, or a small measure of peace. I wish it were true, too, but here's the thing. I've been thinking of myself as like Odysseus, lost and adrift, looking to return to some familiar shores. But I am not lost at sea. I am lost in endless tunnels. The labyrinth. The difference is important, because labyrinths are designed, built. Somebody or something made this impossible place, and they must be held accountable for what they've done to me. They cast me as Theseus, not Odysseus. But I won't play that part any longer, either. The strange rules of this place have turned me from the human I began as into something else, then something else again. They have made me a monster, and so I will be the minotaur of this labyrinth, and if I can, I will tear it down around me, and destroy those that built it. My warning is that you should be very wary. In public places of silent, expressionless men and women, keep your distance. They may kill you, or they may do worse. If you see them, run far and fast, and even more importantly, I warn you, I beg you, don't ride the train to the end of the line. That was a long one. That was a really long one. How long have I been reading this for? Oh my god, I've already been streaming for an hour. Holy shit. Oh my god. Okay. Okay, I'll do one more. I'll do one short one. Yeah, one more small one. That's what I'll do. Okay. Um. Trying to find a short one, damn it. Okay, that's too short. You know what? I'm gonna do two short ones. That's what I'll do. This one is called An Egg. And no, I am not kidding. That is exactly what it's called. The story is literally called An Egg. So let's go. It was a car accident. Nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. You left behind a wife and 2 children. It was a painless death. The EMTs tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you're better off. Trust me. And that's when you met me. What? What happened? You asked. Where am I? You died, I said. Matter of factly, no point mincing words. There was a, a truck and it was skidding. Yup, I said. I, I, I died? Yup, but don't feel bad about it. Everybody dies, I said. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place? You asked. Is this the afterlife? More or less, I said. Are you God? You asked. Yup, I replied. I'm God. My kids. My wife, you said. What about them? Will they be alright? That's what I like to see, I said. You just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man, some vague authority figure. More of a grammar school teacher than the Almighty. Don't worry, I said. They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contempt for you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, you said. So what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither, I said. You'll be reincarnated. Ah, you said. So the Hindus are right. All the religions are right in their own way, I said. Walk with me. You followed me along as we strolled in the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular, I said. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So what's the point then? You asked. When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby, so all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so, I said. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences you've had. You've been a human for the last 34 years, so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for longer, you'd start remembering everything, but there's no point doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And into lots of different lives, I said. This time, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You said. You stammered. You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically, time, as you know it, only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where do you come from? You pondered. Oh, sure, I explained. I come from somewhere else, and there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but you honestly won't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, could I have interacted with myself at some point? Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know what's happening. So what's the point of it all? Seriously? I asked. Seriously, you're asking me for the meaning of life? Isn't that a little stereotypical? Well, it's a reasonable question, you persisted. I looked in your eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind? You want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me? What about everyone else? There is no one else, I said. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth. All you. Different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone? Now you're getting it, I said, with a congratulatory slap on the back. I'm every human who ever lived? Or whoever will live, yes. I'm Abraham Lincoln? And you're John Wilkes Booth, too, I added. I'm... Hitler? You said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus? And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, I said, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. Why? You asked me. Why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Whoa, you said, incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe is just, you said. An egg of sorts, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And with that, I sent you on your way. That was really good. That was really freaking good. I honestly kind of want to... I kind of... in a way, I kind of want to stop that. I kind of want to stop with that, but I did say we'll do one more, so... Well... Okay, so... Let's see... short one. Okay. This one's short. Yeah. Okay. This last one we're going to be reading is called Autopilot. Have you ever forgotten your phone? When did you realize you'd forgotten it? I'm guessing you didn't just smack your forehead and exclaim, "Damn," apropos of nothing. The realization probably didn't dawn on you simultaneously or spontaneously. More likely, you reached for your phone, pawing open your pocket or handbag, and you were momentarily confused by not being there. Then you did a mental recap of the morning's events. Shit. In my case, my phone's alarm woke me up as normal, but I realized the battery was lower than I expected. It was a new phone, and it had this annoying habit of leaving applications running that drained the battery overnight. So, I put it on to charge while I showered instead of into my bag like normal. It was a momentary slip from the routine, but that was all it took. Once in the shower, my brain got back into the routine it follows every morning, and that was it. Forgotten. This wasn't just me being clumsy. As I later researched, this is a recognized brain function. Your brain doesn't work just on one level. It works on many. Like, when you're walking somewhere, you think about your destination and avoiding hazards. But you don't need to think about keeping your legs moving properly. If you did, the entire world would turn into one massive hilarious K-WOP cosplay. I wasn't thinking about regulating my breathing. I was thinking whether I should grab a coffee on the drive to work. I did. I wasn't thinking about moving my breakfast through my intestines. I was wondering whether I'd finish on time to pick up my daughter Emily from the nursery after work or get stuck with another late fee. This is the thing. There's a level of your brain that just deals with routine, so the rest of the brain can think about other things. Think about it. Think about your last commute. What do you actually remember? Probably little, if anything. Most common journeys blur into one, and recalling any one in particular is scientifically proven to be difficult. Do something often enough and it becomes routine. Keep doing it and it stops being processed by the thinking bit of the brain and gets relegated to a part of the brain dedicated to dealing with the routine. Your brain keeps doing it without you thinking about it. Soon, you think about your route to work as much as you do keeping your legs moving when you walk. Most people call it autopilot, but there's danger there. If you have a break in your routine, your ability to remember and account for the break is only as good as your ability to stop your brain going into routine mode. My ability to remember my phone being on the counter is only as reliable as my ability to stop my brain entering morning routine mode, which would dictate that my phone is actually in my bag. But it didn't stop my brain entering routine mode. I got in the shower as normal, routine started, exception forgotten. Autopilot engaged. My brain was back in the routine. I showered, I shaved, the radio forecasted amazing weather, I gave Emily her breakfast and loaded her into the car. She was so adorable that morning. She complained about the, quote, bad sun in the morning blinding her, saying it stopped her having a little sleep on the way to the nursery, and left. That was the routine. It didn't matter that my phone was on the counter, charging silently. My brain was in the routine, and wait, what? Sorry. Let me restart that. I apologize. My brain was back in routine. I showered, I shaved, the radio forecasted amazing weather. I gave Emily her breakfast and loaded her into the car. She was so adorable that morning. She complained about the bad sun in the morning blinding her, saying it stopped her from having a little sleep on the way to the nursery, and left. That was the routine. It didn't matter that my phone was on the counter, charging silently. My brain was in the routine, and in the routine, my phone was in the bag. Which this is why I forgot my phone. Not clumsiness, not negligence. Nothing more than my brain entering routine mode and overriding the exception. Autopilot engaged. I left for work. It's a swelteringly hot day already. The bad sun had been burning since before my traitorously absent phone woke me. The steering wheel was burning hot to the touch when I sat down. I think I heard Emily shift over behind my driver's seat to get out of the glare. But I got to work, submitted the report, attended the morning meeting. It's not until I took a quick coffee break and reached for my phone that the illusion shattered. I did a mental restep. I remembered the dying battery. I remembered putting it on to charge. I remembered leaving it there. My phone was on the counter. Autopilot disengaged. Again, there lies the danger. Until you have that moment, the moment you reach for your phone and shatter the illusion, that part of the brain is still in routine mode. It has no reason to question the facts of the routine. That's why it's a routine. The act of repetition. It's not as if anyone could say, "Why didn't you remember your phone? Didn't it occur to you? How could you forget? You must be negligent." This is to miss the point. My brain was telling me the routine was completed as normal, despite the fact that it wasn't. It wasn't that I forgot my phone. According to my brain, according to the routine, my phone was in my bag. Why would I think to question it? Why would I check? Why would I suddenly remember, out of nowhere, that my phone was on the counter? My brain was wired into the routine, and the routine was that my phone was in my bag. The day continued to bake. The morning haze gave way to the relentless fever heat of the afternoon. Tarmac bubbled. The direct beams of heat threatened to crack the pavement. People swapped coffees for iced smoothies. Jackets discarded, sleeves rolled up, ties loosened, brows mopped. The park slowly filled with sunbathers and barbecues. Window frames threatened to warp. The thermometer continued to swell. Thank fuck the offices were well air-conditioned. But as ever, the furnace of the day gave way to a cooler evening. Another day, another dollar. Still cursing myself for forgetting my phone, I drove home. The day's heat had baked the inside of the car, releasing a horrible smell from somewhere. When I arrived on the driveway, the stones crunching comfortably under my tires, my wife greeted me at the door. "Where's Emily?" Fuck. As if the phone wasn't bad enough. After everything, I'd left Emily at the fucking nursery after all. I immediately sped back to the nursery. I got to the door and started practicing my excuses, wondering vainly if I could charm my way out of the late fee. I saw a piece of paper stuck to the door. "Due to vandalism overnight, please use side door. Today only." Overnight? What? The door was fine this morning. I froze. My knees shook. Vandals. A change in the routine. My phone was on the counter. I hadn't been here this morning. My phone was on the counter. I'd driven past because I was drinking my coffee. I'd not dropped off Emily. My phone was on the counter. She'd moved her seat. I hadn't seen her in the mirror. My phone was on the counter. She'd fallen asleep out of the bad sun. She didn't speak when I drove past her nursery. My phone was on the counter. She changed the routine. My phone was on the counter. She'd changed the routine and I'd forgotten to drop her off. My phone was on the counter. 9 hours. That car. That baking sun. No air. No water. No power. No help. That heat. A steering wheel too hot to touch. That smell. I walked to the car door. Numb. Shock. I opened the door. My phone was on the counter, and my daughter was dead. Autopilot disengaged. Damn. Damn, that was freaking dark. Oh shit. That was dark, man. Wow, that was good. Like I liked the like it reads as if he's like in a police interrogation room and he's literally trying to think of excuses. That's what this seems like to me. Wow. Wow, like for real. That was like really dark. It was good, but wow. Wow. Okay. Well, okay. That's the last story. That I don't know what my favorite one is. My favorite one might be the an egg. That might be my favorite one because I like the concept of it. The next favorite would probably be fog, because like that one touches the human condition and what that people do when they're isolated. Um, the train one was weird for me. The strangers was weird to me because oh my god, it it I liked it. It just seemed a little odd to me. I don't know. I can't really describe it. This one, this one I just read is probably my third favorite that I did. Um, yeah, an egg is probably my favorite that I read today, and the fog is probably the second, and this one's probably the third, and then the strangers is probably my least favorite of the bunch. I might be forgetting one that I'm misremembering or something, but wow, that was a lot. Okay, well, this has been a great stream. I had a lot of fun doing this. Next Saturday I might do this again, or I don't know what I'm gonna do. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. I'll I might actually read some more next week. I don't know. But anyway, I'll see y'all later.